G'day everyone and welcome back. We're here with the AusCycling NRS Esports Team Series. I have with me Kate Bates from, of course, you have known from SBS live coverage, which we've seen many of. Kate, we have the first round and we're starting with a TT and a short one at that. Is this your kind of TT, if you could choose?
Yes, good evening. I'm just affixing my Zwift pin here. It's a little bit fancy. A few more virtual NRSs and we'll get you one of these. No, just joking. This is a pretty disgusting time trial course, I think, for a rider like me, which is to say inclined to enjoy the flatlands and not so much the hills. But I will say that the first 6.1 kilometres is kind of up my alley. And that, I think, leaves this kind of course open to riders like myself who love a good flat time trial and also the climbers. I reckon that might mean we see a bit of diversity around the bikes used as well. I certainly would go for a flat and fast bike with a disc wheel and then just suffer up the climb. I think there'll be some people choosing time trial bikes and some not. So yeah, a bit of an interesting way to kick it off, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think if we were doing a tandem, you and me, Kate, you could do the flat part, and I would take the hill part for sure. Because
Yeah, I
that,
mean, do I get to jump off at the bottom and you just finish
yeah,
it
yeah,
on your own?
yeah,
You don't want to have to
yeah.
carry the dead weight up there. So we'll
No,
work
not
on that plan maybe.
absolutely. Yeah, well, this a short TT is kind of hard to get right for because you got to nail your warm up. You know, you would know from your professional days. Generally, when it comes to the warm up for a time trial like this, the shorter the TT, the longer the warm up, and sort of vice versa. So I'm sure everyone who's lining up in the pen today of the NRS, the elite riders from Australia and New Zealand, they've probably been warming up for a good 30 to 35 minutes for an effort like this.
Yeah, absolutely. They need to. Let's take a bit of a look at the map because I think that describes pretty well in pictures.
Mm.
Everyone likes a good visual. Exactly what I was going to say. Talking about, I'm kind of moaning about this course, aren't I? But I do think it ticks down a little bit at the beginning. This is a little
Mm.
bit deceptive in terms of until the climb, what it looks like. But look at that climb, 9.6% average. And it goes for just over 2 kilometres, 2.1k. So 242 vertical metres of climbing. The vast majority of that is in those last couple of kilometres. You will want to turn up very warmed up. We
Mm.
actually have an interesting start list tonight, but I'm very, very excited to see Mark O'Brien on there. And I know that you would have seen his dominance on the road in real life, IRL, as we like to say. But what he has done in the Zwift world is really incredible. Whenever his name is on anything, I feel like we get some dropouts because they see it and they're like, well, what's the point? If Mark
Yeah.
O'Brien's there. And now he actually is the one on the start line with the quickest time on this course. He did that back in 2020 in the SRAM Send It series. 12:25 from memory. I can check that when they're out on
Wow.
course. That is like lightning fast. And so, let's see. I think he's kind of our benchmark to watch. Can we talk a little bit, though, about the start order? Because it's a bit different to a normal time trial, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. I think with regards to the start line in Zwift, it's actually the sooner you enter the start pen is the I guess you start first. So if you enter late, right on 4:30, that's generally the game because then you get to go last. You've got the times ahead of you and lots of rabbits to chase, I suppose. And like you mentioned with Mark O'Brien, he actually won when they raced up here in the Esports Club Series not long ago. In fact, he didn't just win;
Mm.
he destroyed the field.
He
So
smashed it,
yeah, he
as he
smashed the
tends to
field.
do. Yeah.
But I'm really interested in seeing how the women go. Who's going to emerge from the women's side of it, the top? Because many of the women who are signed up today don't have Zwift Power accounts, so I think they're new to Zwift. So
Yeah.
unknown.
Now, it's an interesting one. Now, last time we were up here from memory, it was Katie Banerjee who smashed
Mm.
it in the women. And at the time, I wasn't too familiar with her racing. I then DS'd for her for the Aussies at the World Championships and had the absolute privilege of the lead-in with all of the riders and chatting to them. she's just one of the best personalities I've seen. Now, I hark back to her. She's not out there tonight, but we may see the emergence of some news with talent, because that's where Katie started her esports journey. And we may see that again. So even if we don't necessarily know the names, as you know, the immense amount of power that we have in terms of the data that we can see, we'll be able to tell pretty quickly how much chop these riders are.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to see a split of two halves. We're going to see basically the same amount of time is going to be spent on the flat to also on the climb. So it's going to be really, really interesting. And I'm hopefully going to unearth maybe some new talents who perhaps after signing up to Zwift and doing this, completing this team series and maybe winning, they might even sign up for perhaps the Zwift Academy later in the year. And,
Yeah.
you know, get up there in the finals like Ollie Jones and Sam Hill have, who are both entered today.
Yes. Oh gosh, I'm a big fan of Zwift for talent ID and
Yeah.
for getting new people into the sport, and also people like Justine Barrow, Katie Banerjee, who are just exceptional athletes, but they don't have the access to, like a normal career,
Mm.
because they've got lives and careers
Yeah.
and children and all that sort of thing. And so I do think that this just provides kind of more access to some really incredible athletes. And when the pictures do come in, I am very interested to see, and I'm going to keep you on close watch for this, who's chosen to line up early and get spat off that conveyor belt early versus who may have waited. And hark to the producer, we've got Anna Russell in production tonight, the indomitable Anna Russell, and we might borrow your whiteboard later in the series, Anna, to analyse some things. But we'll see if we can get a shot of the conveyor belt at the beginning if we can. Now, this is Sam Hill we've got out on course, Jethro, and he's got to come in as one of the smoking hot favourites, right?
Oh, he does. He's going to love this flat section. We know Sam Hill. He is a big unit, big, strong rider. He will love this flat section where he can use his absolute power to try and gain as much time on the Mark O'Briens, the smaller riders, as he can before he hits those steep sections. But it's interesting, Kate, that he's gone out first. So he was first into the pen.
Well, and also, if we're seeing it right, Ben Hill is just has started after him. So that's an interesting one, isn't it? Now, for anybody watching at home, you can also log into Zwift Power and take a look and look at how they're doing from a live perspective, and that's always fairly interesting. But I can tell you that Sam Hill has gone out like he's been shot out of a rocket, and I feel as though there's going to be a lot of lactic acid building in the legs, which may get somewhat less pleasant, can we say, by the time he hits the bottom. But look, he's going nearly 50 clicks an hour. His heart rate looks not too bad. I think we've already ascertained, Jethro, that you're a few years, maybe decade younger than I am. But when you when you see the riders who are over 30, you often see quite a different heart rate profile than you see with some of the young riders. And so when I was first watching them in game, I was quite concerned some of them were about to have a coronary event. They were so high. But equally, sometimes we can see them sitting in the mid 160s to mid 170s, and that's max for them. So if you know Sam Hill, you'll know that his threshold is around the 175 mark from memory, where I've seen him at. So he is certainly giving it a fair bit of stick here. It looks
Yeah,
like Ben Hill's
definitely.
losing time, is he? 4
Yeah,
seconds?
he is losing time. He's got those nice shoes on too. I think they were the. I'm not sure what. I remember unlocking them just recently. They're a great little shoe, but yeah, the heart rate's an interesting one. Some of the juniors that I work with here in WA often tell me what their heart rate is mid-session, and I've heard 215, 220 at
Oof.
some ends of some big sessions. But yes, as you get older, your heart rate does come down a little bit. But Sam Hill motoring along. It's I guess Ben Hill. Well, what club is Ben Hill ride for? He's riding for the CCS cycling team, and they've got good representation today. 6 riders on the line, but Yeah, there's also something to think about, Kate, and everyone watching. You've got to remember the bike makes a big difference on this course, and it's kind of a hard one to choose because there's time trial frames that are really good for the flat section, but not so good on the hilly section, and vice versa. So we can
Mm.
see here that Ben Hill, he's opted for the Canyon Speed Max, which in fact is the quickest bike, TT bike, on the flat, but it's not the quickest on the uphill. So he's obviously trying to make most of his gains on the flat section of the course, which he doesn't have long left because I think it's about the 6 kilometre mark. They hit the steep slopes.
Yeah, I fully endorse this tactic. This is what I would do. I'm not sure about the visor. I can see Anna Russell in the production booth shaking her
Yeah.
head. I actually can't visually see her. I just know her well enough now to know that she'd be shaking her head at that. But those shoes are very cool. He has chosen to really belt it out. I
Mm,
think both of the Hill brothers have probably chosen that tactic, to be honest, based on their split times.
yeah.
Um, and I think it will be interesting. So I believe there's 10 seconds between each rider, not the
Mm,
15 that we thought. Now, if that is the case, looks like Sam Hill's putting a little bit of time into Ben, which is interesting given the setup that we're looking at. There we do
mm.
have Ben Hill on screen. There, we also have the live metrics, which is really cool, isn't it? So 5.4K, that's how far in, not how far to go. So remembering that it's 8.2K, yes, you're right, at about the 6 kilometre mark, 6.1K mark, he hits the climb. So let's see how he goes there. Now, over on the right, we've got Zwift one and only, Carly Taylor.
Yeah.
Now, she's quite a climber. Bit of a different setup here, too. Isn't that noticeable?
Yeah, it certainly is. I'd love to get a little bit of a side profile and see what she's opted with, but she's gone with the road bike, maybe the lightweight setup. Looks like the Canyon to me, I believe it is, or it could be the steel bike. Not sure what it is, but she's opted with the road bike, no helmet. And if you saw the visor earlier, like you mentioned, Kate, the visor you actually have to unlock on Zwift via going for a run. So
Mm.
Sam Hill has actually been doing a bit of running, unlock the visor, and then you can wear that in game. But Carly here is starting to hit the slopes of the climb, and her bike would be loving it. The Durace 91,000 just sitting there as well. That's pretty nice. I'd love that in real life. But Carly's pushing some big watts here, 4.7, getting close to the 5 watts per kilo mark, which according to Zwift Power is around her 20-minute power. And you'd hope to get a time around maybe in the 13 to 14-minute marks as she hits the steepest ramp. So this is probably where you get to pace your effort and lift the power up. And we might see Carly sort of hover around the 6 watts per kilo mark as she gets closer to the end of this climb. But it's interesting looking at the RPM. If you're watching at home, you can see 61 here for Carly. So I suspect she's probably out of the saddle here. And it's at 178 beats per minute. Oh, she'll be hoovering up the air like a vacuum cleaner.
I think I might steal that. I like that very much. 13%, you are dead right. She would be breathing through her ears at this point.
Yeah.
I think it is really interesting that Carly has gone off first. Now, she is definitely not just one of the nation's best, but she's one of the best climbers the world women's cycling has ever seen. She's incredibly efficient and very good up the climb. The world's best, if we can say that, for this course is actually Chu Yuna, and that's in 12:52 with a
Mm,
power average of 348. If that doesn't give you lactic acid, I don't know what will. Just the thought of it. Now, the best Aussie we've seen on this course is Nicole Frayne, of course, our Aussie road champion. I love it when we
mm-hmm.
see the IRL riders in game.
Yeah.
Very closely followed by Sarah Gigante, and they're at 14:39 and 14:43
Wow.
respectively. Now, Nicole Frayne actually did that in the NRS, the digital NRS, back in 2020. So it seems like 2020 was a really fast race for this course, but that's also bearing in mind that this course isn't accessible unless you are in a race. So we don't have people just going out and doing the segments. So I think if Carly came through around the 15 to 1550 mark, she'd be on
Mm.
an absolute blinder. Maybe 15 and a half is what I reckon we can expect. Let's see how she goes with that. But she's certainly very consistent, still putting down a lot of power. And that heart rate is entering territory that I don't think I've seen since my teenage years. So I hope she's got some water on hand and maybe a towel as well. I reckon she'll be pretty sweaty. Over in the men, Troy Herfoss, geez, we've got a field, don't we?
Yeah, we
This is
do.
quite remarkable who's lining up over there. And we know Troy Herfoss can climb. He's certainly had some really incredible results, even around Mount Buninyong, on
Yeah,
that very consistent climb.
yeah, absolutely. Troy Herfoss. Now, I believe he's Australian Superbike Championship competitor as well, from memory. I think he's sitting in the
He is, that's
just
right. Not
outside the
just a
top 10.
competitor, he smashes it. And he had quite a nasty accident last year. So it's great to see him back in good health and using cycling and Zwift to get fit, because his wife, Emily, is also
Mm,
one of, I've got to say, the best climbers Australia has ever produced on a road bike. And
mm,
so she's a young mum. They've got just one small human, I think. But so
mm.
they are absolutely multitasking. So great to see Troy out here. Maybe he can convince Emily to get on, or maybe they're doing week on, week off. One of them is parenting
Yeah,
while the other is racing. We'll have to find that out.
yeah, the FIFO approach. I don't mind that. I actually was talking about Troy Herfoss earlier on the weekend as he hits the steepest part of the ramps. You can see that he's probably sitting in the saddle around 82 RPM as he hits the steep parts. But you might see his cadence drop here as the gradient rises. But I was talking with another Australian Superbike Championship rider, Mr. Brian Starring, who's from WA here, and he's also a very talented cyclist. He actually took out the win at the Kalgoorlie Cyclassic, Mr. Brian. But we were talking about the superbikes and how there's quite a lot of cyclists within that competition. And Troy is, yes, he's a very talented one at that. And it'll be interesting to see what sort of time he does as he's sort of hitting 5.7 watts per kilo as well. And I'm just looking at the in real life times here, Kate, from back in the Giro 2019. And the fastest Aussie on that day was with a time of 13:54, and that was Luke Durbridge. So we mentioned Mark O'Brien's time, which is around the 12:20 mark. That just goes to show how fast that time is and how competitive these sort of times would be. And also Carly's in the 13-minute range. It just shows that these guys are really fast and super fit on a course like this.
Oh, they sure are. I mean, this we can talk, and we will in the coming weeks. We'll talk a lot about the incredible champions that we have
Mm,
lining up and the depth. And tonight is a bit of a way. It's quite different to your normal esports racing. They don't often get a chance to do an individual time trial. We have a lot of team time trials happening in the
mm,
Zwift world. Individual time trials are a little bit different, but it's a good way to almost stamp their authority down a little bit and throw down the
mm.
gauntlet, because it's a race of truth. That's what they say. But I think the truth part is you can't hide from yourself, which you can probably do in some of the other races. Troy Herfoss is now making a few catches. And so
Yeah.
this is an interesting element, isn't it? We never got a shot of that conveyor belt, but you described it before we came on air, Jethro, as like a sushi train. Like they rode up onto it and they kind of got spat off the front of it, and it was very cool, actually. But they lined up. It was how they turned up. So there'd definitely be some riders who've put a little bit of strategy into it, thinking, I don't want anybody to really chase me, or I do want a whole heap of people to chase. And I think from Troy Herfoss, we can see that you can have a bit of an advantage if you do that. Back to the women. Now, we don't have the time splits coming up, but we can see their other metrics, which is pretty cool. 16%. This
Mm,
is such a tough section of the
yeah.
course in that last kilometre. If your heart rate isn't at max now, I think you've left your run a little bit too late. What are you there, having a coffee ride or something? We haven't seen any of that from any of these riders yet so far. They are absolutely leaving it all out there. I can't wait to see these aggregate times at the end, because it looks like Ben Hill has come through in 14:19. If that is correct, if we look at those KOMs for this segment. Now, we will confirm that at the end. Production whiz Anna will get onto that for us. But it does look like Sam Hill has had a cracker, but there's pretty tight racing. Not a lot of gaps there between these riders in the end.
Yeah, definitely. The gaps are going to be pretty thin for sure. As you see there, Ollie Jones has just smashed it at the moment. We know Ollie Jones is a New Zealand rider who I believe won, was this Academy or was he a finalist back in 2018? So he is a one to watch for this series indeed, and is currently in the hot seat. And I wonder who's got the fastest time on the women's. We'll find out shortly, as it stands. But like you said, this is I guess a throwdown of your ability of your watts in the first round of the NRS Esports series, because it does put a target on your back if you take home the win in round one for the following races. So if I'm just looking at the next rounds, we've got quite a climbing heavy series, Kate. We've got Yorkshire, the Harrogate World Circuit next week, which is 4,800 metres across 27 kilometres. And then week 3 is the Watopia Climbing Series, which is 43k and over 1,000 metres. So this series does lend itself to the climbing types, that's for sure. And I guess, well, yeah, it's kind of balanced this series towards the more climbing cyclists.
Yeah, it is. Come on, where are the sprint days? Well, they do finish on the Champs-Élysées just
Oh,
around in
yeah.
time for a
Mm.
couple of days ahead of the tour, actually. And might be
Uh-huh.
a good warm-up for everybody who's very heavily in tour fever at that point. And just quite frankly, if you're not in tour fever at the point, what are you even doing watching cycling?
Oh, I know.
I
Yeah.
think that's, peak time of year. But it is good uh, for the athletes to ride along with it a bit. I think it's really motivating. And we will have a lot of, and I don't know if you're one of these crazies, Jethro, we'll have to
Oh, yeah.
talk off air about this one just before I dob you in, who ride the 21 days essentially. They do a tour on Zwift themselves.
Oh, I
So
love it.
yeah, I like the idea of it. Maybe if I could get somebody to drag me along, I might be inclined to do that too. Now, really interesting seeing Ollie Jones at the top there. He has ridden just under the 13-minute mark before, and that was a
Mm.
couple of years ago when he was in Zwift Academy, as you so rightly say. Absolutely sensational performance. But
Mm.
what I've noticed is his average power tonight is around the 460 watt mark.
Good Lord.
Um, that yes, good Lord, I think that is a perfect way to describe it. What a monster of an effort! Over 6 watts per kg average for that effort, no less. There are very, very few people in the Zwift world who can finish ahead of the Hill brothers in any kind of fashion. This has been quite a dominating one, so that is very good. But they aren't all in yet, and because there was no kind of succinct starting order, we still have some big names to come. So love seeing Torben Partridge Madsen out there as well.
Mm.
He's another rider who's just been absolute revelation of the esports world. In fact, I don't think I'd recognise a lot of them in person because I just know what their avatars look like so well. But but we can look at that leaderboard and think, oh, well, this is done and dusted, but it's absolutely not. So over in the women's, we're having the same thing. Some of those riders will have finished, but not all of them yet. Carly Taylor was our first across the line, but we're just seeing the back end of the fellas finishing here, Jethro, and there's some big names on that board. I think I noticed Crow. Was he in there as well?
Sam Crone was up there as
Yeah.
well. Yeah, Sam Crone. Yes, so I think a lot of these riders are actually in good nick as well. This time of year, you're at the backside of summer where you've had a really good campaign usually, just because it's easier to ride. So this is one of the two periods I think, at least for Australian and New Zealand cyclists, where you're riding really, really well off the back of a good criterium season in the Aussie summer, and yeah, we're certainly seeing some fast times and guys like Ollie Jones, I have to say, his 20-minute power on Zwift is around the 6 watts per kilo mark, and that's a marker that a lot of professional teams look for when
Mm.
they're looking at ability. You want to be around that 6 watts per kilo sort of threshold mark to even get a look in. And so that's kind of what these guys are competing against here at 13:30. You can see is the clear fastest time, but this is classic because if you're at home, it's obviously the evening here in Australia. Doing this kind of effort after dinner, it's well, at night time, it's going to be. You mentioned caffeine before. There would be a few caffeine gels ingested, and it'd be a long time to wind down after this. And I think a lot of the Zwifters in this competition will not just finish at this effort. A lot of them actually jump on another race after this event, as we can see. Um, a hill just rolling in here. So it's
Are
not
you
just this
having a
event.
giggle at his name? You are, aren't you? You're going, a hill just finished. I do that all the time on
Well,
Zwift. It's
how fitting.
okay. That's Aiden Hill, and he is just another hill in that
There's a few of them.
CCS. I'm thinking it might be Canberra Cycling Club, but I might have that confirmed for me. I'm sure somebody will correct me. People usually do when I get
Mm,
the club's name wrong. But you're spot on with what you say, and I think that especially Ollie Jones
mm,
finishing, with an average power that high is just really impressive. A name that
mm,
I've really noticed tonight as well. He's a little bit further down, but is Dylan McKenna. Now, I reckon Dylan
mm,
McKenna is a rising star in the esports world. He had a
mhm.
really solid start to some esport racing last year, and I think if he keeps at it, we might see him in the green and gold Aussie colours in the future. So I really urge him to certainly keep going with the
Yeah,
racing, and it's great to see him out. Not necessarily known for his time trialling, but I'm glad that he gave it a crack. I think some of the hilly courses will really suit him in the coming weeks.
yeah, absolutely. From the Nero Continental team, which we know the team has actually just gone to Belgium as well. And funnily enough, I guess this is kind of what's left of the team that hasn't gone across. But we're down to a couple of the women left. You can see there is 13 left, and we're on board with who's this Celia Cowan from the Butterfields racing team, and she's motoring along pretty well. I'm not sure what level on Zwift she is, but she's got a pretty decent setup there. Maybe less than level 33 because she doesn't have the disc wheel on, or maybe she's chosen not to run the disc. But yeah, 3.8, 3.6 watts per kilo. I think maybe she might be running a little bit on the lighter side, just keeping her powder dry before she hits that climb, because in this sort of TT, you do want to negative split it a little bit, or at least that's what I would say, Kate. Would you suggest that would be I guess, way to pace the power on a time trial like this?
Yes, I think that's very fair to say. And in fact, you are spot on because Celia Cowan is a level 28 Zwifter. I like to call that a
Mm.
baby Zwifter, which is doubly relevant given that she is under 20 years of age. So
Oh
we
wow,
can also
yeah.
call her a junior burger. I just feel like everything I
Junior
say is kind of
burger.
highlighting that I'm not a junior burger anymore. Alas, on we move. Now, she has
Yeah.
climbed enough to have got the Tron bike. But
Oh,
for anybody who has done it like myself, and the Zwift community riders have already mocked me for this one, Jethro, I forgot to hit the sign up button for that
oh,
one.
sad.
So I passed my 50,000 metres, felt very offended that I didn't have my Tron, and have almost in protest refused to do it since. So
Yeah.
I don't know if Celia has got access to the Tron, but she's certainly done a solid crack of climbing on Zwift, and I reckon she's pretty comfortable on this lead in. And once she hits that climb, I think we might see her really throw it down a little bit. But again, quite a young rider, so it's great to see some of the juniors using this as development. Lucinda
Mm,
Stewart is another one that's out there. She
yes.
is just an absolute superstar in
Mm,
real life on both the road and the track.
track,
I
yeah.
think the cyclocross world is probably happy she doesn't have a cyclocross bike. She would make some trouble for people there too. But it's great to see her out there as well. And she's so far she's running in the top 5, which I think is really impressive because it's not the kind of course that Lucinda Stewart would normally really dominate on. She's the kind of solid rider who can get a result on any course, but put her on a flat TT and I would be shaking in my boots at her capability. But it's so great to see her out there and doing it. And on that, we've actually got quite a slew of under 23s, Jethro. So it's really good to see so many of the younger development riders, if you will, coming through because, of course, some of our elite riders have headed overseas now to have a little bit of fun in the season over there. So it's great to see them jumping on the esports.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually remember Lucinda Stewart from a track nationals I was at a couple of years ago, the junior track nationals and the junior road nationals as well. And I was with the WA team for that event, and Lucinda was just a beast, and she took out many of the events. And it's good to see her continue on through to under 19 and under 23 with her success because like you mentioned, maybe not necessarily the course she would choose for a TT as well, she's the national criterium champion as well, back to back. So super strong. And yeah, it's great to see those young riders testing themselves against the elite riders because this is one of the very few methods that you can do that as a junior rider. So that was pretty
Spot
exciting,
on.
Kate, wasn't it?
Well, look, I got so excited. My little pin has done a U-turn on me,
Oh,
so I need to
it's a
settle down,
men.
stop flapping my
Nift.
hands around. Yeah,
Nifty.
nift, very nifty. Now, I also wanted to point out that slight oversight on our part. We got so excited with these bikes that I forgot that in the NRS, and this is a reassurance to everybody, they neutralise it all in the back end. So really, it's all about looks. But I
Oh,
like that.
style
And
point
if you
finally.
ask Anna
Mm,
Russell, you got to look good to go good. You've got to, feel good. Oh, there's a whole thing. Anyway, it
yeah.
starts with looking good. And so I think that some of them have chosen the perfect setup. But it doesn't matter for our junior burgers who don't yet have those fancy bikes that won't work against them.
Yeah, I'm a little bit disappointed we didn't see the Buffalo bike, but points to Ben Hill for the visor and extra points for running because, well, that's just hard.
I think we need a style category. I mean, if it's legitimately just about how you look and there's no performance value, there has got to be some kind of style points awarded
Yeah.
for that. Now we will get the results up when they come through,
Mm.
and the men's results I believe are coming up now.
Oh, look at that. We've got Connor Reardon, who's taken third place. Ben Hill in second place for the CCS cycling. And then Ollie Jones for St. George Illawarra cycling team taking out the win. So Ollie stamping his mark early on the men's field and putting the marker on him, Kate.
Yeah, now that's interesting. And we've been doing a lot in Zwift community with the Aussies in the APAC, the Aussies and the Kiwis, and we've had some really interesting racing and results. And so this is not too surprising, I've got to say. But Ben Hill, massive second half because he was losing a little bit of time to his brother in that
Mm,
first half. But it has been very impressive to see what he did there. But Ollie Jones, that was just sensational. I mean, that was incredibly impressive. And what it may mean for Ollie Jones is that next time they are out on course, which is on the 21st of June, when they're heading around Yorkshire, and that is the Harrogate World Championship course,
mm.
dare I say nobody's going to let Ollie Jones get even a metre off the front because he would be quite formidable to try and chase down.
Yeah, Certainly, and it's actually a good result for St George Illawarra because remember this is a teams competition and it's a combined points from all the riders that go towards the team score. And Connor Reardon is also representing St George, so they've taken 400 points for that podium, and I wonder if it actually goes all the way down to 20 points as well. So that's a big start for St George as well on the Zwift Esports NRS series.
It is, and it will be interesting when they're racing as teams, and an interesting result over in the women's as well.
Yeah, we've got Carly Taylor, of course, from Inform Make, taking a third spot and a good start to the series for her. Eloise Sandow as well from Inform TM Make, taking second place. And then Chelsea Holmes. Now, Chelsea, I'm just checking to see which team she rides for. She is... Well, I'm not sure. But she's taken on the win, and it'll be interesting to see the times as well. We can check the times and the results if you'd like to on AusCycling.org for all the time results there as well. But yeah, Chelsea taking the win, Kate. That's a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, she is also in form, so they have done a little
Oh,
bit of a clean sweep of the old podium. Now
yeah.
she is pretty new to Zwift riding. In fact, she hasn't done too many races in there. She's a level 21 Zwifter, but I think her IRL experience is a bit heavier than what she has been able to do in the Zwift world. I reckon give her a little bit of time on this platform and she's going to accelerate pretty quickly. It will be a very different dynamic when they are doing those bunch races, especially with such dominance from the
Mm,
informed riders. It's not
mm.
too different to the early days in the Zwift Community League where we saw a couple of the teams kind of able to do whatever they wanted. They were
Yeah.
so dominant. But I think when it does come to the group racing, there isn't such a huge field that they will be able to just shut it down. I think it will still be pretty dynamic. So pretty cracking start. I
Mm.
think that I almost feel like, can we do a like a rider of the series just by popular vote? And by popular, I mean you and I.
Yeah, I think
Because
so.
we're here. So for me, I'm going to choose my rider of the night. How do you go past Ollie Jones? I mean, you can if you like. There's two of us, but that's my vote.
Okay, yeah, well, that's a pretty good pick, and I am also from New Zealand myself, so you've taken my homeland pick. Can't believe it, but I'm going to have to go with Sam Hill just on the visor and the shoes. I was pretty happy with that setup, but you know, Kate, I'm really looking forward to the road racing coming up because unlike the club series, where yes, they were racing in their clubs, which we saw in the last 8 weeks, they also had their own Zwift teams as well, like your Aeros and that sort of stuff. But I feel like the racing in this series is certainly going to be a lot more team dynamics. There's going to be more of it because they're racing in their in real life teams. It holds more clout, would you say? So
I
we might
would
get to
say
see
yes.
some breakaways, some lead outs for the big sprinters. It's going to be really cool.
Yeah, I think you are right. And in the women, I have to give it to Eloise Sandow. What a fantastic
Mm.
ride from her as well. And what a great way to start this whole series. I think that a bit of a tough start. Thank you, course designers. Wes Salzberger, I'm looking at you. But we do have some pretty excellent weeks coming up. So I think that they have really set the mood for what's going to happen over the next month.
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking forward to it. So back in 2 weeks' time, everyone. If you liked the course today, and if you maybe go out and have a crack when you next see it on the event list on Zwift. But we'll see you guys in 2 weeks' time for Worlds Yorkshire and Harrogate. It's going to be pretty exciting, Kate, and I'll see you there.
We'll see you then.
Yeah, yeah.